Well, as more and more assets are digitized, and of course the access to those assets are digital, the incentive or the reason for cyber attacks has gone up. I'm sure anybody who monitors even your home router would realize the number of attacks that are happening all the time. And no ConnectGov will be complete without a discussion or talk about that. So coming up next is a presentation on modern approaches to active defense. And I've got to say, on this particular topic, since it's about defense, I think he's got the best name for the job. SHERIF NABAWI, Vice President, Asia Pacific and Japan of CrowdStrike.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to be here face-to-face again with you after 2 years of being behind the screen. So thanks, CIO Academy, for this. I'll jump straight away into what we've been seeing. It's been seriously a challenging year in general for what we've seen in the cybersecurity industry. Starting with a number of series of attacks that we've seen nation-state increase their capabilities across all levels. They've introduced ransomware as well into highly level critical targets like healthcare. At the time when all the nations were trying to build up vaccine capabilities, this intellectual property was hacked, stolen. We've dealt with incidents across Asia Pacific and Japan where high-profile healthcare providers have been subjected to that, subjected to the secret recipes trying to steal that, the supply chain, understanding where the vaccines are going, amazing stuff that has been going. And then obviously the sunburst and what we've seen highlighting the strong capabilities in our supply chain and the vulnerabilities in our interconnected system. Moving on, we've seen in the Colonial Pipeline attack, the vulnerabilities that can happen on the critical infrastructure. Not only this, it was a small sample of how this can affect our life and completely disrupt and cause panic to the people. Then the food supply, we've seen an attack by GPS where the US has put a very front line and hard line on Russia because the supply food chain attacks that happened on that front. And then the Kaseya, latest, the perfect marriage between the big game hunting ransomware and the supply chain attacks. Something that we have seen growing, and we understand that this will continue to grow. But we're not here to raise fear, we're here to understand where is this going. For us as security professionals, this is only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of increase that happened behind the scenes. Groups are collaborating together. Threat actors, whether they're e-crime, hacktivists, nation states, are feeding off each other in a distribution model. Ransomware as a service is becoming lowering barrier of entry for groups. So for me to spin a complete new capabilities of attacking a certain customer, vertical, government, etc. I don't need to build the whole capabilities from A to Z. I will use group A to give me the reconnaissance access and the accounts. I will use group B to give me the malware, if there's malware used. I will use group C to give me a distribution mechanism across that. And then they basically work on a profit share model. This is what we're dealing with nowadays. That's why the increase in the spin-off of the groups changing their tactics on day out and day in. So what does this introduce to us in our world when it comes to modern defenses? Reality is, it's not about having a single bullet point or a magic wand for a technology. There's no single technology that can work and stop attacks from A to Z. What happens is, as the modern security technologies evolve, majorities of our customers have 30 plus security tools in their organization, which means for you, you have to maintain the right talent that can integrate those technologies together, that can provide you capabilities on how you stop attacks, that can deal with the attack and alert fatigue day and night, 24/7, because threat hunting doesn't stop. You need a 24/7 operation because that's exactly, at the times where you're asleep, that's exactly where your targets are working on. In a recent survey we've run, we've seen that 71% of our responders, whether customers or outside, had integration complexity issues with their stack. So you acquire all these solutions, they provide you good point capabilities on email, on endpoints, on cloud workloads, on SaaS models that you have, but then how do you integrate all that? And then 92% had operational security issues with how to keep up with the knowledge needed to integrate, operate, and basically reduce and stop the attack levels with the threat landscape that we're seeing. But the main figure is really the alert fatigue. All these technologies build up, give you more alerts, feed in a more bigger bundle, whether that's a SIEM or other technology that you're using, and 80% of our customers were tired with that. And the complexity keeps increasing. There's no obsolete technology. Your laptops are still there. Your physical servers are still there. The data center did not kill, or the cloud did not kill the data center. They both coexisted. The same with every technology that we introduced. As a matter of fact, all these technology evolves with different vendors. So when you go to the cloud, the complexity that you have in your shared responsibility model on the cloud is introducing more problems for you, because the way cloud A provider would deal with it is different than the way cloud B, and the way cloud C will deal with it. Oh, and by the way, different software, different control planes, different operation, different configuration for each of them. So the complexity is increased, and that's the nature of the game for us. But the problem is, when we add on this, we can't acquire the talent that will be able to do this. So how do you look at modern ways of dealing with this? First of all, let's understand, all this telemetry we're getting and all this data we're getting, what do we do with it? Reality is, the industry decided to do what's called XDR, and that's a great story. Ask 10 people in the room what XDR is, they'll give you 10 different answers. Why is this? Because XDR as a concept evolved from vendors where wanted to evolve the endpoint detection and response where the attack happens into further level of detection and visibility. But they couldn't basically come with the answer. So you could see that next-gen endpoints just renamed their packages to XDR. You can see that SIEM vendors renamed their packages to XDR. Oh, and by the way, even old integrated platforms that worked with, like, you know, the models of old antivirus also renamed their products to XDR. So reality is, what is XDR by definition? Is there a way, and why is that important for you, right? Because all this data coming in, the SIEM by itself provided that it's just a compliance tool, but compliance is not enough in security. When you collect all these logs, and your operational teams are not able to look through them, to look through that haystack and identify that one particular alert that is causing an attack or is an indication of an attack, then we've got a fundamental problem. So when we look at the larger haystack when it comes to XDR, we have to redefine XDR. Reality is, in the XDR model, understanding what is XDR is the key. It's extending the capabilities and visibility that you have on your endpoint to multiple environments. You want to look at the cloud workload, you want to look at your network infrastructure, you want to look at your IoT. You want to extend that so it gives your security teams an easier, quicker way to detect breaches. The definition of XDR for each organization and the requirements can be different. It's not a broad product that you will buy off shelf that will supply that. Which products do you need to integrate? If you have XDR and you're connected to AWS and you're connected to email security, X, vendor Y, Z, you need all those to provide you with the XDR level. So the reality here is the extension of EDR is the main capabilities. Attacks happen on the endpoint. You need a quicker way to detect those when they swim in the network, when they are in the cloud, when there are misconfigurations, etc. And the way to do this is really looking at the telemetry you get. Beyond just what you have from your network, from your email, from your cloud providers, and obviously from your SaaS and capabilities on the CASB. If you integrate all these together, providing you configuration, assets, capabilities on the users, the vulnerabilities that reside there, and the workloads in the cloud, then you achieve a quicker way to actually being able to identify where that is. When it comes to the XDR, it's enriching the endpoint data with additional data that can go beyond that and identify in multiple environments. It's also providing the real-time capability for you to be able to go and detect the same level that you can detect on the endpoint, detect those capabilities on a cloud workload, on an IoT device, or on any device that you have on any workload. And then be able to do that proactively, establishing on your SOAR platform's capabilities that you can easily, automatically identify when certain attacks happen and block the certain capabilities and indications that can lead to those. But it doesn't stop there. When we go to the cloud, is an extra element there. We need to understand what the type of attacks in the cloud are, because as we move in from our physical infrastructure, and a lot of us at the time of the pandemic had to do this overnight. That transformation journey for some of you that was planned over a few years had to happen in a few months. We've worked with customers and organizations that had to shift overnight, literally overnight, to their homes with hundreds of thousands of fleets. So how can you do that when you're also putting your workloads in the clouds, when the data center is becoming less and less usable for you? You gotta understand that it's a complete tangled web out there. You're not working with single vendor, you're working with multiple vendors in the cloud. And on top of that, each of them has got different ways of configuration, different control planes. So when you are running your DevSecOps and continuously developing applications, runtime and operations, and then those applications are going up from the build room to the cloud, you need to identify what your blind spots are. Every single change in your application means that the attack surface is changing. How can I continuously look at that? How can I continuously be able to have visibility on the actual level of the application itself throughout the runtime of the development lifecycle? We need to identify those actual gaps. And that's why when you're doing your DevSecOps, the continuous evolution of any application that you run and how it evolves and the speed of it, you have to have the application throughout the process being examined for misconfiguration, being examined for source code errors, being examined for vulnerabilities before you're ready to shift it up and move it all the way right up to the cloud. So the comprehensive visibility needs to be the same level that you get on your endpoints. So whatever you have on your endpoints, you need to have the same on your application. You need to have your same on the cloud. The ability to actually look at the misconfigurations, that's one of the key issues that we see when we work with our clients, when we work on their attack life surface in the cloud. Reality is we all understand that there's different level of configuration. The cloud itself is very powerful, but the simplicity and the power of the cloud comes with a very complex way of architecture when it comes to configuration. And those configurations, if they're not picked up at the very start and the beginning of the life cycle of an application, or a cloud workload that's being posted, can cause an attack surface. As a matter of fact, even in a very well configured cloud workload, you will be able also the adversary will be able to also, if they have access, to adjust the plane, the control plane, so that they can post workloads on your behalf, do crypto mining. They can change the configuration. They can expose those workloads to the internet. So you need to think of all these when you're doing that. And on top of this, that runtime, correlation of that runtime is essential, because that visibility that you get on the control plane has to be continuous. It has to be in a way that it's not one-off. It has to be automatically triggered that there is a vulnerability in your application, whether it's during the build time or the runtime. And at the end, when you look at all the assessments, they have to come up with an image assessment. All those images of the workloads that you're assessing in the clouds, they're posted there. But how quickly how can you integrate that into your DevOps, the SecDevOps lifecycle? That's the key when you're looking at the operation here. That's why in CrowdStrike in general, when we started on the endpoint, we didn't have a vision of an endpoint. We had a vision of a complete platform that's fully cloud-based. We have no requirements on the sensors, apart from the sensors on your laptops, on your servers, on your workloads, IoT devices, mobile, and they all do the scanning once. That allows us with a very low footprint, a very lightweight agent to apply all those technologies that you want. And there is no single vendor bullet point, as we said here. So our collaboration with other vendors through the alliance of XDR that we've announced, our new modules that are coming out, is gonna facilitate this journey. But it all starts, again, as we said before, people, process, technology. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the modern way of looking at this is don't understand that the single XDR product or a single SIEM product is gonna solve the complexity that you have and of all the alert fatigue that you had. Definitely, you should look at revisiting the ways that you are understanding the XDR and see what XDR means to you as an individual. Which telemetry do you need in order to reduce the breaches, in order to reach a quicker decision, and in order to help your teams or use third-party providers to help them in order to reach and plug that gap. With that, I'll open up to any questions you have, and I think we have lunch next, right? Good, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sherif.
Done.